All right, another 55 seconds. We will go ahead and begin.
I don't see the donuts. I can't approve these.
She lied to me?
I heard it.
Victoria found, oh, see, Susan
I
heard
you
it,
say,
and someone else, I guess, heard it. And Victoria said it was in the minutes. We knew it was gonna be that easy. We should have said breakfast. You were buying for all of us. Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. Last meeting. Let's go ahead and take roll. Fran? Here. Dion? Terry? Susan? Here. Frank? Dave is here. Savannah. Emily is stuck in traffic. She's already texted me, said she hasn't moved for 25 minutes on Highway 25 due to road work. Callie, Jeannie, here, and Tom's not speaking. He's up here. Okay. All righty. So. Public comment. Nancy, do you have anything to say that you'd like to? Okay. All of you hopefully have looked at March's meeting minutes. Okay, I'll give you a minute to look at it.
Well.
Oh, you're gonna make comments on it?
Yeah. Victoria also gave an update on the existing downtown plan that they already have in place, that about no food trucks on Monterey Street,
Mhm.
that had been passed. They didn't see that in the minutes.
Oh, and that was correct, because I remember us discussing.
Yeah.
it. So that should be added.
And then also, when we talked about that, it's a big deal, but the city council worked on that about in Gourmet Alley. And like Terrence had on the fees, but there was also talk about part of the fees and covering the city needs with the ballards, like that, closing it, if someone be, that's their job, or how do we go about
Right,
doing
right.
that? So that was another. And then lastly, there's only one team.
Okay. All right, we'll get 2 teeth in there. And then Victoria, do you have the second comment that Jeannie talked about? We could
I
add
do,
to it.
but
Oh,
these are.
oh, that's right.
action minutes, and That wasn't something they voted on.
Oh, all right.
So it was a discussion point, but it wasn't anything that we took action on.
However, though, did you put in about the city, say, passing that plan where there were no food trucks?
Yeah, but that,
Because that one was already, an action that was done, so that's important to have it in. Especially when you're talking about food trucks at the
well,
next
especially on
meeting.
her first point, location. 'Cause
Mhm,
Victoria gave us an update on other
mhm.
cities and things, and then we talked about that, because that was a motion that was made, and she said that had already been discussed in the past.
So with those few corrections, do I have, someone who would make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, March's minutes are approved. All right, I had a hard time. I didn't know what to put on the agenda, but I guess we're gonna start with, what came up with the parklets last night. We did pass, a proposal. And Dion, go ahead and explain it to them, what the proposal was.
What we passed is, we're gonna allow the parklet that's there to remain until such time that the restaurant goes out of business or it's sold, then it'll have to be removed. Until then, they've got to bring it up to code and scale it back to where it's not blocking any other business, not.
And all parklets are not allowed on Monterey or on the side streets as it was written.
Okay. All right, and it passed 4-3.
4-3.
4-3. Well, my personal opinion was I wanted to honor, what this committee had said. And we had said they wanted it down. And I just felt as chair, it would be really uncomfortable to vote against what you had recommended. If Dion had made that proposal a couple of months ago, it was a good proposal. I could have lived with it. So anyway, that's my justification. So, okay, yeah, G, do you have a question?
Well,
can
no,
see.
I was just trying to figure out if you voted for it because you didn't want any on Monterey, or you voted against it.
I voted against what he proposed.
That's
Because-
why there was a 3.
That,
Okay.
there was 3 of us who said
You
no.
made it sound like you voted
No, no,
for
no,
that.
no. All right,
And the reason I proposed it was, people don't understand, in your business. Times are tough. I mean, it probably cost them. I would guess $25,000 to $50,000 to remove that thing, pipes and stuff in there. And he may opt to get rid of it just because of the price of fixing it, so. And I don't believe it's gonna be there very much longer, so.
and when we say fixing it,
Bring
I-
it
I-
bring it to code.
isn't it pretty much?
Going it back.
No, it
Well,
has to
no.
not encroach
Right,
on adjoining businesses, which means it has to be modified to do so, which
Right.
may or may not either be financially viable for Tom
mhm.
or Dan, either
Mhm.
one, or it may not be able to be done due to the way that the structure and everything exists already right now. So that part is still up in the air.
Did they
Is
adopt?
there a time frame?
But we didn't do a time frame. So see that's a little stickler there, so probably it's gonna go down to when they're no longer there. Because I can see them dragging it out as long as they possibly can, so.
So I have a question. I know that it went to the city attorney, made a comment or whatever. I still don't see why it doesn't have to abide by the sidewalk. Being further,
Oh, the 20 feet.
yeah. Or whatever.
According to what
It was-
Andy said, and
It's a
Jimmy,
fire too.
It's like a
Sidewalk and fire hydrant.
we questioned him Andy over and over on that because it doesn't make any sense. It was a January 1st law.
Well, you're
But-
either a little pregnant or you're not.
Yeah.
Kevin, do
And
you recall the reasoning? Sorry.
apparently he was saying that there was a waiver, wasn't it, or
I
Sharon?
read where in San Francisco, they had to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went through that in detail before, but no,
Okay.
know, we examined
Sorry, Sharon, I didn't even see you.
She snuck in.
I didn't even see you come in. That's fine. I asked Jimmy.
No, but went through that in detail and, the read it, that it did not apply to that situation. I can pull up the exact.
Okay.
Okay.
So it didn't apply when, at the time it was constructed, but now the new laws are in place, would that then impact in terms of bringing it up to code?
No.
Codes are current all along.
Okay, so it's AB 413.
Did the council implement Campbell's or one of the other?
No, because this committee, once they said no parklets at all.
Okay.
That negated.
Just checking.
I know that was a recent, I don't know if it was Monterey or whatever, it was on the news. And they were required to take all the parklets down but the city is paying to remove them.
There, Jimmy, write the check.
Delete that from the notes, please. So AB 413, that's that law that improve visibility across crosswalks and intersections. So it's specifically, read the language with Andy, asked him if this applies to, how he relates to parkland. So he said, the question posed is whether AB 413 affects the location or regulation by the city of the 2 restaurant parklets, this was last year when we talked, that have been established pursuant to city occupation. My conclusion is that AB 413 does not affect the city regulation of the 2 parklets. It only applies to vehicle drivers and restricts parking in certain designated areas, which might incidentally be in front of a parklet. It does not impose any duty of regulation on from the city in relation to the park.
What about the fire hydrant? Is he aware of it?
I'm not sure we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's been checked, and it doesn't violate the codes.
We're talking about the, oh, you mean that, yeah, so we already looked into that, we actually verified again, it meets, it's, around the circumference of the fire hydrant, and it meets.
Okay.
Mhm.
But then I agree with Dion, that San Francisco was taking theirs down and moving it, so I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's a
Yeah.
little hazy
It's
area.
Pacific Grove that's doing the removal.
Oh, Pacific Grove, okay. Interesting, well, that kind of contradicts what we heard last night, how every city has them, and Gilroy is one of the few that do not.
Yeah, and their council is going, this month. as well. There are some other talks on a few of them, but they've done several, they're going to more street,
Mhm.
seating. Sidewalk seating.
Sidewalk seating, yeah.
All this is talking about getting rid of it.
Anyway, so let's reflect back on our 2 years. What have we accomplished as a committee?
We got some of the buildings to remove the fire.
Yes,
That was probably
we did do
The
that.
big
the
thing.
big man.
And then some of them to deck, to put windows,
Mhm.
dressing to. Work on.
Any other successes that you could think of that we did?
What about street vendors?
Yeah.
The street vendor ordinance we looked at. We do have proposed ordinances, right? And then we do have ordinances that are coming out over the next few months.
Truck, food trucks?
On
The
April
food trucks, the location. Council will be discussing about whether you want to find these vacant buildings that have been vacant for, 15+ years. Because that really does play into our economic development. These empty buildings are not helping anything. And, legally, I don't know if we have right to tell a building owner that he has to do a certain thing, but then on the other hand, you're downtown. So it's kind of we're caught right here in the middle. You're hurting us, but we can't, really force you to do whatever you want with your building. But we'll see what the council comes up with on that. That'll be a lively discussion, I'm sure, because we also have the law that we have to deal with.
When is that discussion?
Jimmy, when's that discussion coming? It's fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
So that would be before July. So May, June, or, yeah, May or June, I guess.
No, it's at fourth.
They do fiscal. I thought like you, Jeannie, when I saw fourth quarter, I knew I would say, oh, good. December. Talking about this. Anything you wish we would have done, or any comments that you'd like to make, because this is a wrap-up meeting, so your reflections on the committee, any I wishes that we could have done.
Wish we would have been able to figure out a way to get funds from the city. Jimmy, if there's any more left.
Yeah.
I think we just need a little bit more. Hopefully we'll be working a bit here next year or two. I don't know how long that'll take, but I just see some things downtown between First and 10th or 4th, 7th, whatever you call it. That, light poles need to be repainted again, and some of the landscaping when you're walking through the crosswalk between them. Just kind of maybe have maybe a redesign where there's some bright color to it, landscaping.
You bring up the P bid, maybe it would be worth our while to have a really quick little discussion about that. If you could do that P bid survey over again, what ideas would you come up with to make all the building and business owners buy into this?
I think you gotta basically say that. This weekend, I was in a small town called Meridian. Historic, and I took pictures of it. The sign, that cool sign, historic, and then all the flowers are blooming and they're yellow. Yellow. So it's very well. It's very clean,
Mhm,
and that has to do with a lot of the buildings.
mhm.
Many of them, not paper, so, I think you just gotta, let building owners know that at the end of the day, I believe that it's everyone, including the building owners.
But I
What
guess.
is the status
Go
of the
ahead.
P-bid though? I mean, that,
I just,
Done.
No, it's,
Had there been, was there a survey with,
they sent, you guys sent out a survey, the city's sent a survey like a year ago maybe. And, yeah, it was kind of put on hold with the new city council members coming on board. But hopefully
Was there-
with this,
was there interest?
not-
Nothing.
so it's gonna be a challenge to try to, so you have to get a team together. I had spoken with, Jane, sorry, Jane and the person. So that this thing was called and so she was kind of giving us a rundown. We're pretty much ready to go. We need funds to start it with city pays and we reimburse for it. So it just thought matter of getting the team together, start spirit.
So, but the effort is still moving forward.
It kind of slowed down, but it's still a bit.
A vision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I want to do with the new city council kind of figuring out what the new. game
What,
plan
what
is.
does it need to happen? I mean, you have to have X amount of
51%.
people vote,
Of square footage ownership,
square footage or
it's
number?
square footage.
Square footage.
And what is, again, boundaries?
So when Jay and I looked at it, we went from third. Third street, right before the park, went third up to seven.
So it's not first through
We
10.
didn't go first.
Do you think it would help if the GDBA or some of the more aggressive owners downtown would each take a section of a block and went and personally met with the people and explained it to them? Because I kind of have the feeling that some of the, owners really had not gotten the message or they didn't understand it properly. And so it kind of got tossed aside. But in Morgan Hill, the person that was in charge of it went and did personal connections with each of the people and then was able to get it passed once everyone understood it.
Yeah, I did. I think like, so it's basically running a campaign. It has to be something that you just can't start one day and leave it off. So it has to be a team that really just focuses on it.
Single person has to own it,
So,
and then you have to drive it, and you also have to manage the boundaries such that you're looking at how you want to get votes. And so that may be including people that you wouldn't otherwise think to include. And it also means that you can set up how people pay or what they pay based on where they are, so it doesn't all have to be the same, so.
And I think you need to really,
So all of that needs to be kind of set up, and then I think then when you have the discussions with people, you have an A, B, or an A, B, and C kind of way that you can say, look, it could go this way, or this way. And I think that for a lot of them, not knowing the details is the scary part. But when you lay down the details and you have somebody who has business acumen like Dave, let's say, and he goes, okay, I realize that's going to be $385 a month to you. However, what do you already spend on this? What do you already do on this? And what is $385 really to your business if we're going to have all of these other things? And that's the campaign part.
well, and it's also, what are those other things?
Sure.
Where, is it just graffiti? Are we talking awnings and other beautification or, really what's involved? Is it
Would you like to be on the board?
somebody,
That's how you sell. See, it's like, you get to decide that. And so I think that somebody has to head it up really who has that kind of attitude and who can get a set of colonels below them to basically say, okay, we're gonna go out and make this thing happen because we all believe in it. And then use the examples that are given from other cities of the before and afters and the costs involved to the
yeah,
individual
I think
business.
that's a big thing. Best practices would be a bigger seller.
Yeah, you have to have a pitch book. I mean, that's the way it is.
Do you think you'd have enough people downtown that could be, one leader and then all the little colonels below? Because, I agree with Terrence, it's like a campaign, you really have. to
Well, and that may
decide.
be something, the direction, this is our last meeting, but does this type of a committee morph into something else? That is, is it something that works with certain departments, with Victoria's on development of downtown? Last time it seemed to be more ordinances, wasn't really, we okay on a few of those, but I think we need to look at other avenues of helping promote and move downtown. How do we work better with the Downtown Business Association and trifecta with the council?
Well, I think that's where your key is, right? Is that you guys have had experience to have the interaction with a number of staff and city council members to be that really good interface to understand when you're talking to somebody that's in GDB that doesn't understand how the sausage gets made, that you can go, look, I've already got this connection with this person and this person. This is what's going to really happen or not be able to happen. So just kibosh all that time. Let's talk about this. And then let me go have a discussion with Carol, or let me go have a discussion with Terrence, or let me go have a discussion. I think you guys can be the catalyst in that other organization to help that happen.
And I think that you need to have people on the committee, or at least the person steering it, be able to rise above and rally the others to rise above the naysayers. You know, that there are going to be naysayers, but that whether they have to have a louder, more optimistic, more visionary voice than the ones that are trying to drag it down. So they're going to be the ones that are going to be the cement, you know. So it has to be someone that's very visionary, very successful, you know. Yeah, there are obstacles. We get that, but this is the, you know, these are the opportunities that we can still have. That is, I think, going to be a make or break as well, as far as, you know, who kind of leads up that and who is the voice of it.
And to Kelly's point, you only need 51%. So it's very important early on, to not waste your time with a third of the people just are cut baiters, right? And you've got the people on your side. It's just that middle group that gets you to 67 or whatever it is, and have a strategy. It's really about strategy.
And I feel you have a good starting point with the people you got to know more here on this committee. And look to someone who would be a leader from the business community. Take this on, get your people together and go for it. And, you know, give yourselves a timeline where it just doesn't extend out for a long period. If you want the P-bid, make that your focus and do it and sell it. And maybe you become a little coffee clutch group, you know, where you have 8 to 10 people from the building owners and the businesses that meet monthly or every 2 months. And you can talk about different issues, and then they become your little army, and then you can make change down there.
Well, it's trying to motivate. We got 62% of the building owners don't
Oh, yeah.
live in the area, you know. How do we work with that?
But you
And
know,
it's another-
their addresses are out of the area. But most of them do live here in Gilmore. You
I
only
mean,
have,
like Gary or something, that's kind of a mixed thing. He's in town but there's a lot that are still out of there.
But if it comes to dollars and cents, I mean, if they're business owners. Yeah, what's the bottom line? If I see that bottom line, you know, improves. Show me how it's gonna improve.
you know what one of the biggest problems with downtown is? That we have building owners that are very comfortable leaving their buildings empty for whatever reason. And they just don't want to get involved. That's a discussion I think the other building owners need to talk about. And say, you're hurting us by leaving your building.
Yeah, but how do we motivate them? How do we
Well-
help them? You know,
They don't want to, they're comfortable. I was really disturbed when I was down there and we were removing the pictures from some of the windows. And I'm not gonna mention any names, but I was told by this one person, these people own this building and it's been empty for about 12, 15 years. They're very comfortable and they don't want to do anything with it. I mean, I cringed inside. Because I said, you are hurting everybody in this downtown by knowingly not going out to finish your building and to get people in. How do we motivate those? What do we do? I mean, we can't force them to do something they don't want to do, but it's different when you own a home. Your home, you can leave vacant or whatever. It's not affecting anyone's dollar. But when these people are affecting your dollars,
Well, there is, I'm gonna disagree with that a little bit, because if you have a home
that's not.
in the neighborhood
maintained.
that
Yeah.
it's not maintained and stuff, but we do have blight ordinances, right? In terms of neighborhoods, because it does impact the value of all the other homes in the neighborhood. I don't know if there's some type of a blight ordinance that could be,
And hopefully eventually our vacancy.
we'll do something like that.
One of the ways to get, not to big in business owners or building owners, but the other building owners is if they have a good relationship with their tenant, go through their tenant and have the tenant be an advocate. I don't know what you guys are talking about because I was like, it's traffic, but that's.
We came up with PBID, talking specifically about PBID, which is a little bit different. It has to be building.
Right, but having the tenant be the advocate towards
Sure.
the building owner is one avenue, whoever was thinking about doing this. It's.
Well, and I think the carrot is always better than the stick,
Right.
right? And so I think if you show the value, and again, I really believe, and I have had very little, compared to all of you, very little experience working with and having conversations with downtown businesses and business or building owners. But it is, very easy to get dragged down by some of the building owners. And you have to fight that, you have to counter that, you have to have someone that is just excited about the opportunities and really very visionary, enthusiastic, and not getting dragged down by that, not, that this is not. I think that that's gonna be the key to the
Well, and I
success.
think it's also working with the city because you may be a building owner and your business, your building may be great and ready to rent. But you gotta get, how do we attract businesses? I mean, I'm not gonna open up a business downtown just as a hobby, you gotta make money.
Right.
And I think sometimes people miss that whole concept, with that. So we work with, Victoria City, or if we're getting a director that you had presented before back in the eighties and different ones that we have a bigger plan, for downtown.
There are very few spaces downtown that are actually ready to rent. There.
Gary Walton got several buildings and then, but I know he's one that's looking for a particular.
Well, they're not ready to rent. They're not to code, trust me. I've been in all of them, they're not to code, there's like, and they want their tenants to do all
Not
the,
to code, why weren't they red tagged? I mean,
they don't have ADA bathrooms, they have to do a whole, but like, Sammy's place,
that-
That's why they're.
that's not.
I know.
The
Hotels
The
building.
hotel building, I know that one very
Casey Jen.
clearly. That one isn't ready to rent.
but the one that he has next to Coastal Halls, those are supposedly ready to rent. There's a sign that's on outside.
Where, at Casey Chen's?
No,
Next to Halls.
Oh,
Gary Walton.
You mean the.
The sign doesn't mean it's.
No,
Have
they're
you
not.
been in those buildings? They
You
are
have to sign up.
so
The
many.
sign is up, but they're not ready to
The
rent.
tenants would have to put.
It's what Emily.
But
said.
that's how it's done. Like if someone, a hair salon is gonna come into one of the buildings,
No.
it's the hair salon
No.
people that put
The
that
place,
in.
the place needs to be to code. It's not even to code.
Okay, then where is the city on that? That it's not to code?
Well, but I
That's
think it's.
what
But
the-
it's not open. It's.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the interior.
Exactly. And that's why we have the vacancy ordinance is like trying to address some of that because the city can't do anything unless someone's in there.
Right.
But there's no, that's why everything stays empty.
Uh-huh.
So our next strategic planning session, which has not been
Awareness.
determined the date yet, is on economic
Because the
development.
city doesn't allow it.
And I think it's, I think it would be
Good point.
appropriate, certainly economic development is not specific to downtown, but downtown is a part of economic development. Bring something, what is it that you would like the city to focus on in the downtown area that would help to move this along? That could be brought to consideration, as we look at strategies for economic development moving forward.
See, that's a good idea, Kelly, but the point is. There are laws that protect the building owner. You can't.
I'm not talking specifically, but some of the issues that are of concern that perhaps we can support.
Mhm.
I think that those should be brought to that whenever it is scheduled for consideration. I mean, I know that holistically as one of the things that I am going to push for is hiring an economic development director to work, in partnership with Victoria, that would be, you know, so what would you bring to this individual as something that, hey, to help bring vitality to the downtown? These are some of the things that we would like to see focused on by the city. But,
And then also, where's the city with the Dick Bruins building?
I was
Talk
thinking of
about
that
light,
too.
And right in the center of town. I know before they were talking to one of the owners. Supposedly coming.
The buildings are for sale.
Oh, the
But it's been for sale though.
There you go, Dave.
Quite a while.
They're selling a wall.
Yeah, it's all set.
I just want to mention, like, I'm obviously getting very fired up about this vacancy, but that's, our vacancy ordinance hopefully will solve that problem. So that is one thing that this
Back to-
committee it's still moving forward.
It
right?
is.
Nothing has changed.
We should be addressing it before July.
And so that is one thing, like you were
I
saying.
don't think that's.
You know, but it's going to
It's a
be
start.
something that moves forward and helps that issue. But I also think that, information, I guess, or education about the processes, like everyone's like, well, what is the city doing about the vacancies? Well, you guys can't do a lot
Much,
unless stuff like this. So just educating people on that. And I don't know how that happens or if that's line with what you guys are talking about, because I see that a lot. I see, like, especially on Facebook, like, and Zach does a pretty good job of going on there and like explaining what the city's allowed to do and what they aren't allowed to do, but in reality, I think a lot of people just aren't informed about. Hands are tied about a lot of things.
well, and that's what I'm saying is getting a committee that is leading or, you know, in charge of the narrative, right? Rather than having other people create that narrative, have the narrative created by people that are fired up, moving forward. Not, these are the things we can't do, but these are the things we can do. We can do this, and this, you know. Taking control of the narrative is a big piece of it, and then how you disseminate that narrative is also, you know, the second piece of that, right? So rather than having, you know, the naysayers be the vocal people, take that voice away from them. Control the narrative.
And there would need to be some, because I know the city is doing a great job of holding meetings about plans for over here, and I think that's fantastic, but I don't think a lot of people know about them too, and so, like, having something like this be at community events where just regular people are gonna see it, who don't necessarily pay attention to the city's Instagram or whatever, or get their newsletters. I think that's a key part of it, is the accessibility of information, and I think that's something that I feel like the city isn't able to kind of get out to people, or the pathways that's happening, and so I think the GDBA it is important for that connection to be made, because that's where information can be disseminated. It's at a lot of their events, or even like the February Art Walk, or things that are just people who don't feel like they care about the city or what's happening here, but they really do, you know, like they don't have that connection or whatever, but if they saw it, like, let's say when they're out for their third party art walk, they're like, oh, there's a meeting about the Civic Center, I actually have opinions about this. I don't see that happening a lot at community events. I think it's really important to have that type of organization or person or whatever there for accessibility for people.
Do you think some of these property owners aren't improving their buildings because of the process and the cost? Because if that's the case, if we have a little window of streamlining things, if you do it within this period, it's gonna save you money, it's gonna be faster, or if they just don't want to do it, I don't know.
The cost, but I think it's, I know with the television, a lot of just the cost in general. They don't want to invest, they want the tenants, because that's the old school way of doing it, is that the tenants just have to do everything. The problem is is, the tenants go in there. They bring the building up to code, which is an X class that they probably may not expect. Then they have to do their actual, what should be considered just tenant improvements, which is creating it into their business. But then
So
they
the
have
owner
this.
needs to just get it ready and the tenant's
That's
improvement is
correct.
specific to what they're using.
It's been done.
But so, for example, like, if someone goes in right now to the hotel building, they have half constructed walls.
Mhm.
They expect the tenant to finish the construction that they have started. Or tear it down or whatever. But that's unreasonable. It's unreasonable for a tenant to go in there and finish their construction that they've started. At, one of Gary's buildings, there's no ADA bathroom, or like, clearly the city would have a problem with X, Y, and Z. That's what they expect, but the business isn't good enough down here. We're already struggling to take on those costs and our TI costs.
I get it.
So I think there's only like one or two buildings that are like good to go, like, we could just move in and be done.
You said the Bruins building is for sale. Did they ever pay anything? Were they ever fined? And have they paid anything?
No, not yet. We continue to find them. And we actually, in the last few months, we reached out to one of partners in that. But the main person actually said, he was busy out of state working on projects.
So he's gonna walk.
So
Have
you're
they-
finding him, but they're not paying. Is there any kind of a lien?
Penalty? Yeah, it's just not yet, because, we were trying to really work with them, so it's just the last few months.
And is that building even safe?
No.
No. it's
They'll
not.
have to pay the fines when they do the transaction. So
That's what.
I was gonna say,
And that's gonna be hard to sell, because then that goes on to the person who's
Mhm.
trying to buy
Yeah.
it. That's what's the problem.
Well, it's not occupied, but it's scary.
There's nothing to condemn. There's nothing there. Like you said, a wall.
it's a wall.
It's like Universal Studios. Yeah.
What about? eminent domain?
You can only do eminent domain if you're gonna use it for a public purpose.
Like if we made it a sale.
Ooh, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah,
I mean,
The sale would be a pretty hard thing to do.
yeah.
Usually highways, hospitals, things like that, or public passages or recreation, not really. Eminent domain in California is very difficult and it takes years.
Okay. So I was gonna ask the Godfather over there for his historical.
I'll take
That's considered.
No, I'm not on, so, when they did, gosh, and I'm so sorry, my brain is just not functioning yet this morning. The earthquake stuff and the retrofitting and all that kind of
Back in
stuff.
'89?
Yeah, back in, all of that stuff, there was the stick used, the carrot used, the stick used, the carrot used. What was most successful?
No,
None of them,
Well, the biggest.
but they're all
Retrofit.
retrofitted though.
All the fines got forgiven.
Okay,
We
so
had
there was a
hearings.
carrot.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
so,
we redid the downtown, we did the sidewalks on the street, all that stuff. We've done, but we had one time we waived fees. People took advantage of that, we've had grants. We tried all kinds.
so, but those, so what, I guess my question is, what was more successful, the carrot or the stick?
Neither.
Yeah, nothing has.
Neither.
Nothing changed. They're still empty.
Yeah, there's.
No, I'm not talking about vacancy right now. I am talking about the requirement to retrofit all those buildings.
Like the fines, they really don't have any effect. Because they just let them build up. And then they come to the council and say, I got it sold, but these fines, you guys need to take those away, and we always do.
And they were forgiven, because that's when I came on the council, was
Wow.
when
Uh-huh.
they were forgiving all the fines. And they were like over $100,000 in fines.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding. So at one point, there were a number of buildings that did not, they needed retrofitting.
Right.
And there was a requirement of the city and to have the building owners retro.
Well, see, that was the mistake, is the city put in
Uh-huh.
place, if there was a business in there and that business went out and you're the building owner, I couldn't let someone come in and rent it
Until it was
until you retrofitted it.
Right.
And it should have been where this building is an unreinforced structure, enter at your own risk, so you can still be turning businesses. That was the number one mistake. And
But, okay, but
And then
my
we're
question
saying-
is,
then
are
the
they all
fines-
fitted
Yes.
at this point?
They all-
Okay, so at some point, whatever was used, either the carrot or the stick, they all got done, right?
Over a
So
long
what
period
was
of time.
more productive in having that done, the carrot or the stick?
Neither, because they had fines, neither.
It wasn't over.
It wasn't just like, we're gonna punish you or we're gonna reward you. It was just,
So
they.
no impact fees didn't
Yeah.
encourage.
Economic conditions in general changed over all of this time.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is people sell their buildings and their businesses in certain times for a lot less than they would otherwise. And then a new owner can come in and they have a lower cost basis in the building and do want to get a tenant and can then also afford more easily afford to do this, is more motivated to do this. So when you have a change of property owners, things happen a little bit differently than when you have the same person there. And the economic conditions, just in general, make
It's,
some of those things happen.
it's very crazy what's going on downtown, because these people spent a lot of money retrofitting their buildings and then never went beyond getting the walls built, getting tenants in. That is the mystery.
Okay, one example, my dad used to own the beneficial building, which is Vine and Pines. And my parents looked into retrofitting it. This is back, the earthquake was in 89, this is back in the mid-90s. It was gonna be over 300 and some thousand at that time to retrofit the building. My parents are older and they were like, if we do all this, are we even gonna be able to rent it? You know, was the other thing. So they chose to sell the building. So they sold it to Montez and then he sold it to George and Jen, who have it now. And then it took the time that was going through, but so there wasn't early on, what my understanding, there wasn't a penalty right out the gate with that. But the part of the problem was it created all these vacancies over a long period of time by putting the signage up that you had to retrofit it. But it was extended out. It wasn't like fines were right out the gate. It was, a lot were trying to see, hey, can I retrofit it? But you gotta look at, are we gonna be able to rent it, not rent it, so forth.
Is there a financial benefit as a business, as a building owner to not, is there some kind of a tax break?
Well, it's fine. It's if some of these guys, the only way it's gonna change on time is if these building owners don't choose someone that. That's the story.
They just don't
So
blame me.
some people have bought buildings for 50,000. It's gonna cost them $1 million to renovate it and get a tenant in it. They will never see their return. Their kids might, their grandkids, but they will never. So they leave it as an empty building. They will never.
So is it a tax
And they can't expect
that they can do?
They
a
just don't.
tenant,
They're hoping.
a new tenant to spend $500,000, half a billion, that's
Spaces low.
yeah, I help my tenants out to get them with the code and, solve best. X, Y, Z to get them. So the bottom line is, the people that own the buildings don't sell. It'll be hard for that.
That's like my dad's.
And is there a reason why they're not
So
selling?
they,
Yeah.
Maybe the city will pump in a bunch
So
of
a lot
money
of-
downtown.
Yeah.
a lot of
Make
them
everybody's
own
profit.
them outright. And they don't have mortgage interest. And so on their tax return, they're not claiming income, and if they have multiple properties, if they're taking a loss on that property. And if they have multiple properties, they can take that loss against their other properties that they do have income on, because they're taking depreciation.
Only do that. for
They're
so many
taking
years.
property taxes, they're taking whatever else, their insurance.
So there is a benefit.
If they own multiple, if they don't own multiple rentals, they can't take that loss on their tax return. So
You can take a little
it-
bit out of against earned income, a little bit, but
That's actually-
not much. You can take that 25,000.
Sure.
$500,000.
This is
It's-
So if you have passive, if you have many.
Hollywood
income,
Accounting.
you can't take it.
Where one movie will make $1 billion and they'll show that it lost $1 billion because they're spreading all the other movies that they made into that one movie. It's the same concept. If you don't have any cost associated with it, you can spread that loss, depreciation, whatever. But you, in addition, you are going to have to invest in it like Dave did to make it work. And they don't want to do that because they don't. need
Because
to.
it's cheaper just to pay the property
It's
taxes
cheaper to
every
pay the
year.
taxes. It's a problem.
It is,
It's what it
and you
comes
just
down
pay
to.
the property taxes and you don't have to invest in it, and they clearly don't need the money, they don't need the income from it. Is what I'm hearing, or
And the frustration is that most of us look at this logically, like, how do we remove barrier X, Y, and Z? You have a common denominator with a barrier we can't eliminate. You cannot force somebody to sell their property. It's like that neighbor next to you who keeps it barely above code, but you're on them all the time about the weeds and this, that, everything.
You have to look for economic downturn. And that they have a reason to sell it and want to get out of the property and give it to somebody else. Or like your parents have a reason to get out of the property, and the next person that comes along goes, yeah, it's worth it for me to buy it at this rate, pay this much money. Plus, I'm in the business of construction, so therefore I'm also, paying half what somebody else would. And then you get a turnover. And
So I think that the challenge for the downtown committee with regards to this PBIT is, how do we, knowing that we probably won't get the support of these people, how do we still make this success? How do we approach, or,
well, how you draw the lines matters.
Yes.
So that's a big thing. So how you draw the lines and what different sections of the PBIT district pays as a factor in that matters. And so if you can include mixed use, for instance, on Eagleberry, right? Who doesn't pay the same amount as people, let's say downtown or
On
corner
Monterey.
lots, whatever it may be that you come up with, because you can basically create this. Those people become square footage votes, right? That help to balance out the negative people maybe downtown with their square footage votes. And there's a lot involved in.
there's a
how
true
you-
strategy.
How do you get those other people to pay that?
Well, they don't have to pay because they can be on a different factor, right? So,
No, the people that are on Monterey that have a building. that-
right, their votes become diluted by the people who don't have
So
to
it
pay.
just goes on their property tax, so the.
Yeah.
That's,
So they're forced to, if it,
and then
It's like
also,
flipping votes. You put it up on the
Yeah.
wall and you go, okay.
also can we
need to
do
get-
it where, like I talked to Bryce when they had the grant for, you get $5,000 to fix the facade and things like that. And if I have somebody who's a painter or a contractor that I want to use, I can't use unless they're union or whatever that fair, how do we get around a little of that? See, so that's another problem that impacts downtown, is when if I can do it for XYZ amount of money, then paying 10,000.
So have your downtown business association put their own program together that somehow or another the city as a lump sum donates into economic development downtown, right? And then they can determine how, for instance, with the facade program, it could be done differently in that manner, right? No?
Yeah,
If you're giving a grant of public funds, you have to pay prevailing wage.
that's.
I can't get around that.
Verbatim.
unless it's an owner, right, if it's owner remodel or something where they're doing the work.
Yeah, but then you can't get the grant.
But you're not dictating what they're going to use it for.
Well, the grant money has been dictated what they're gonna use it
Yeah.
for. It's been mostly facades.
Right, but I'm saying the grant money in a generic sense, given to improvement, downtown improvement, to the
Just getting a lump
GDBA.
sum to GDBA.
In a lump sum to GDBA with an understanding of the kinds of things that they might do with it. And they are able to then do whatever kinds of facade program that they want to do or whatever they have.
pass through,
It's passed.
you're asking if pass through will then eliminate the prevailing wage.
I don't think.
I think that would be a real.
So that's just another stickler that comes out.
Yeah, but if that's not, I don't think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that is necessarily the city of Gilroy. I think that that is.
I'm not
government.
blaming the city,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you'd ask about issues in areas, that's another challenge, you're trying to improve
Yeah.
your building, and then it's like, okay,
Well, I think that
Yeah.
Terrence's approach is the right, you look at who, so you're looking at like 37. Okay, so maybe that 51% isn't gonna work Third to Seventh, right? So now we need to go to Second Street maybe, or, up, halfway to Eighth Street or whatever. Start looking at that,
You're bringing in.
looking at how you can do it rather than how we can't do it. How do we do it? What do we need to do to cross that finish line? And I believe that there are enough people in downtown that have the fortitude, that have the vision, that have the know-how to get this across the finish line. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but you gotta look at things, strategically, and you gotta think outside the box a little bit. And I think that that is kind of the direction that needs to happen. And then hopefully, as that's happening over here, the city is looking at, how we're investing in economic development, of the whole city that, that can support that.
Also, yeah, I think that's great, it's a slow road, but. it
Yeah,
starts
well,
somewhere.
that's what I'm learning about government.
But also, what has the city learned and what has the city put in place now after the big Bruins building? Where we have somebody in the future where this doesn't happen again, because that's a huge weight on downtown now, even if we move forward with the P-bids and stuff right in the center. Do they have something where, someone's monitoring major construction like that should have been red tagged or found out that they were running out of money, where somebody is assigned or someone goes down once a week or something is looking at that? It seemed like the city didn't know about it till after he had gutted the place.
It happened
You know.
almost overnight.
Well, yeah, let me.
I'm just saying for future, it's done, but what it is, but
We
how.
didn't do anything wrong. So first of all, the gentleman had a permit and he went out there and started doing work that wasn't in the permit and he was red tagged. And you're right, it happened almost overnight. So I don't have somebody who's gonna stand out there for 24 hours straight and watch and see.
No,
what
but
they're
even
doing.
if it's once a week, someone comes and takes. a look
But if
at
he does the
it.
work overnight, then what is this having somebody
The
like
damage
once
is
a
already
week?
done.
They were red tagged.
It was.
What else can we do?
It wasn't overnight. I mean, I was down to, it wasn't in one day that.
No, but
Well, I guess the GDBA failed.
Yeah,
like, how are they supposed to park someone out there and be like?
I'm just saying, in the future, so this doesn't happen again, that maybe someone takes a glance, who approves the permit, or they have to put up front funding, because supposedly he ran out of funding, that, are they putting something up front showing that they have the money to be able to do that?
Just to know what your.
But maybe
financing
we
is.
should look at something like this doesn't happen.
That's not
what I'm
practical.
saying.
People aren't gonna show us their financing. I mean, they don't.
But they have to put up a bond for a building like that, so big.
Now realistically, Jimmy, as that building sits
Mhm.
and we don't, do any of you know how much it's selling for? 3 million, okay.
They're
No
asking
one-
3 million?
No one's gonna come and give them 3 million. So,
On a different property.
Yeah, there's two properties.
So,
Yeah.
Why is it so high?
Because they have a connection to another property on.
So two
San
different
Pedro that they're trying to
ATMs?
sell.
Yeah.
So one.
On where?
San Pedro.
oh,
So once they sell that
And
property,
that's gonna be,
yes, it is.
Oh, they're cross collateral.
Mhm.
Is what
so
you're
once
saying.
that property is sold, then there's some wiggle room with the pricing on the downtown.
And what is the viability of selling? Are you gonna
it's been
buy?
for sale for 40 years.
Well, why is it?
Expand your business.
Yeah, Dion, I'll write it up for you.
So when you get a permit, there is no, do any other cities do that where you have to show like a permit above a certain amount of money? There's no way to show like proof for, then no cities do anything like that with
That's.
That's interesting. I mean,
Like,
it's like I'm getting a permit and, like your permit has a value on it, right? And above a certain amount of money, like the city requires a bond or something to ensure that there is,
Especially since it's such a large amount.
because you're right, they're not gonna let you look at their finances, but they could, that is the purpose of bonds.
That you're
So
asking.
how long are we gonna let that building stay like that? Do we have any laws that we can use to say, this is in our downtown, enough's enough, we're tired of it, you're gonna have to do something with it?
well, you asked us finding them, so we're doing everything that the code allows us to
But
do.
they're, you know, they're not, they're just laughing at the fines.
You create a law that allows something else to happen, but we have the laws in place for doing them, for finding them. I mean,
Is there any precedent for eminent domain due to historic purposes?
no,
None?
eminent domain is almost.
And legally, I mean, can you create a law? I mean.
I don't know. I stay out of the
Law, you know, what law did we do?
Even if we did, what would be the consequence? Are you gonna send them to jail, or are you gonna, I mean, like.
Okay, that'd be nice.
Let the record stand. Carol wants.
Well, because I know those three that are involved in that building. Oh, God. Hey, I got an idea.
That,
So correct me if I'm wrong, the city did use eminent domain on Dowdy Street years ago for whatever, you got that vacant lot, you own some other houses and everybody was, okay. So we need a downtown, we need a police station downtown. You guys use eminent domain. Do that, but you can do other things with it too, because it's pretty big.
so I give you some honest feedback.
Yeah.
That's an awful idea.
Okay.
It costs.
Well, we gotta think out of the box.
That's okay, but we'll get all the bad ideas out of the way first. And
Anyway, I'm gonna interject right now. We have 5 minutes left. It's been a great committee. You guys have all been really, really good. You've hung in for the long haul. And I really like the idea of the downtown people getting together. Hopefully you take the ball and you keep running with it. We're here to help you and to be sounding boards, but I think you're onto something. Our downtown is too valuable to just ignore and walk away from. We have to keep fighting the good fight and we have to get some breakthroughs. What I would like from the downtown committee is that when our proposed ordinances come before the council, I would like all of you to be present and speak up.
Can you send out that?
I will. As soon as I see it, I will send each one out to you to say, please come and let your voices be heard. Everyone has worked too hard for 2 years, you know, to just sit back and not let
And
anything
then might
happen.
there be in the future where there is a committee that's downtown, but it looks differently or revamped? I know this originally was created by, there was 3 or 4 council members that had
We had
met.
5. We actually had 5.
And talked one time
Uh-huh.
and then created this and then try and get with more
Mhm.
community people that we were able to sit in such.
Well, you know, you also have to understand, you know, a couple of things. We're still your advocates, you know, as council members, we're available at any time for conversation. I also want to encourage you to attend our strategic planning session and speak up. Again, it's all, I don't know yet, we're working on
Also,
it.
this
Carol can send out that information.
I will send it out.
Right.
Greg's talking about coffee with the mayor, part of it's the strategic plan this Saturday.
Right, but the other piece of it is, we're scheduling a time for another strategic, planning session that will focus specifically on economic development. We're working to get that scheduled, and I think Carol can email everybody.
If you could send that. that'd be
Mhm.
great.
You know, but, certainly I'm open, I'm sure that everybody else, you know, as far as council, we're open to conversation.
I think
Thank
the key for me is that you all have collective interests downtown that are, those of you business owners and whatnot. You have an organization, don't know whether or not it's the one you like, you don't, whatever it is, but you need to have some form of a politically active organization that comes together and that lobbies the council for the things that you want to have in a collective way and takes group responsibility for the things that are downtown. It can't be driven from here to there, it has to be driven from there to here. So I think that's the most important part of it. And if there is, for instance, this particular committee was created of 4 or 5 key things that were really bubbling up downtown that wanted to be addressed. If you were to then bring in the future, we have these 3 or 4 things that we need to get settled out. We want a group of people and we'd like to see another effort, then bring it to the council and say you'd like to have that with a specific purpose of what you want to have and it'll be listened to. But I think it starts there.
All right, anything else? 2 minutes early? Adjourn. Oh, wait, Dave, what?
Regarding like a little bit of, light maintenance for the downtown before maybe this PBIT ever happens, like the light poles and landscaping. If we were to get some proposals from different contractors, like I did for lighting, is that something and you would. be able to-
Yeah, I think we still have money available.
Well, can we find out what that is?
We have some funds, so.
Okay,
Send me some.
yeah, I think there's a couple of things, so coming into the summer, it'd be nice to work on, so I'll get some stuff for you.
I'm gonna give you some really honest feedback about what the challenge for us as staff is in downtown. Is the lack of a unified voice,
Mhm.
number one. I work with Dave here and there on something, and we do things. But if there was a group with a unified voice, and I'm not saying who that should be, but we know who it's not. That makes a lot of difference.
Are you listening?
But
Are
you,
he's
but
telling you.
why can't the Gilroy Downtown Business Association, which I
Everybody
just
on
became
there's
a
got their
member.
agenda going on.
I mean, they could,
I don't
Fran.
think it's much they used to be.
No, but it's still.
Well, Fran, they
Because they're
could, but they have to have that vision, they have to have that desire. And maybe you're on the board now, so maybe, and Dave, you're on the board, you guys can bring that to them to see if they want to rally. But I think Jimmy just gave you some very good advice.
But correct
We
me
need
if I'm
people
wrong,
that-
doesn't the board allow outsiders to come in the very beginning before your
Yes.
meeting starts? So we could be voicing.
Right,
Yes?
You need people that not always complaining that the city needs to do this, the city needs to do that. The businesses on First Street, 10th Street, they never call us, we need to clean their sidewalks or sweep up their trash or
They do.
pick up crap. You know, it's,
Look at what's on First and 10th.
and downtown is a really small part of business in Gilroy.
And that's why I'm saying,
5%.
the whole economic development, it's a component, but it's not the economic development. So,
I think one issue. The voices not being unified is many voices are not,
Mhm.
and that is something, if that was fixed. It would make a huge difference,
And there's difference
and
between.
they're not heard or valued. Anyway, so
So that's a good point, and that's where you guys can also take that and work on it. But talk, I guess, talk. And communicate and work together. Thank you. You've been a great 2-year group.
Bring your gavel.
Okay, I just, hey, Emily. When are you